This meeting is being recorded.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Alex Proksch, and the topic I got today was CSS Combinators. I'm excited for this one because CSS Combinators do some really cool and really powerful stuff for our websites. So I figured first of all, we'd start off at the basics for CSS Combinators. So let's go back to the real basics because it's important to understand the rest of this. HTML. We know HTML as hypertext markup language. HTML is the backbone of all of our websites. We use it to build out structure. We use it to give us different elements and different items in our website. We know what CSS is. It's cascading style sheet. So we know how these two work together, CSS and HTML. CSS stylizes our HTML document, and it makes it all pretty and fun. So let's go from there to what is a parent element? Think of parent elements in your whole CSS document kind of like a giant family tree. So here you've got your family tree, you've got yourself at the bottom here, you've got a mom and you got a dad, and they are effectively your parents. And your parents have a mom and dad as well, your grandma and your grandpa on both sides. Fortunately, in HTML, you don't have to deal with both sides. You just kind of have one side. So you'd have a parent element, and it works in a little bit reverse of a family tree, but it's a good analogy. So you've got your parents, which are your grandmother and your grandfather, and underneath them is, in this case, your mom. And your mom and your dad are both the parents to you. So let's take a look at that in this code document we got here. Let's look at some HTML. So here we've got a header, a nav, and a list item. And following along that same example of the family tree, list items would be the child to the parent element unordered list. And think of yourself kind of like in that family tree, like the list item. And your parent would be this unordered list. Then this unordered list is also a child of the parent item header. And that kind of follows that same progression on down. You may be saying, but wait, you have a nav element in here. How come the nav element's not the parent to the unordered list? Well, because it's kind of like a father or a mother and father situation in this case. They're side by side. They're not necessarily one over or one under one another. And so that's how that hierarchy kind of evolves as you go down. All right. So that's what a parent element is. That's what a child element is. So why is all of this important? Well, this is all really important because when you go to select certain items or certain elements in your coding document here, you have to be very specific because we know that computers love specificity. You have to tell it exactly where you want to be styled and what code you want it to look like and what you want it to do. So let's jump over to W3 schools here. I love W3 schools. For those of you who may not be familiar with W3 schools, it's a great website that offers a lot of information on a ton of different programming languages. As you guys can see up here, Java, jQuery, C++, all these, and they've got it organized very well on the side here. But one of the other reasons why I love W3 schools is because they break it down so simple and so easy to understand. So we talked about the parents, we talked about the children elements in a programming document. Now let's see how we can combine parents to get really specific with our children that we're trying to edit. So this first one here I wanted to take a look at was a simple descendant selector, right? Here's our code here. This is our HTML. This is just a kind of like a rendering thing that they've got on the side here so you can see your code run in real time. But if we come over here on the side, it's a little different what we've been using in class. This is an inline style element. This is where they're applying their CSS to all of their HTML that comes down below in the bottom here. So let's look at what we got. So this is a descendant selector. We've got our H2 element. We got a paragraph element. Here we go. We got a div. The div, and you can tell by the way it's offset, has two child elements in it, paragraph, paragraph 1, paragraph 2. It's even got a section inside of the div. So the section is effectively a child of the div element here, which hosts a third paragraph element. So if we come over here, we look at this, paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, right? What this portion of the code up here in the CSS section is saying is, hey, look at the div element down here and go further than that and look at the paragraph element. Now, everything that's a paragraph inside of that div, I want to make the background color of it yellow. Cool. All right. We want to test that. We can change it and say, hey, I want to make it red. And we'll hit run again. Look at that. It's following those same rules. So this is what you would call just a simple descendant selector. And this can go on indefinitely. If you had a div with paragraphs, a section, and in that section you had, say, another div element, and inside of that div, oops, what are we doing, code? Inside of that div, you had more items like an unordered list and list items. Obviously, you guys are going to use the proper syntax for that, but you could continue to drive down from that paragraph. You could say, hey, inside of that paragraph section, we can go inside of that div and we give it that exact address of what we're trying to change. Okay, so this is a simple version of CSS Combinators where we're combining different parents to stylize a child element to those. So awesome. That's the first example I wanted to show you guys here. The next one is a child selector. You can have brothers and sisters. This is going back to our family example. And you guys would all be descendants of your parents. Let's say, for example, you wanted to select specific children. Say maybe you wanted to select yourself or your brother or your sister. Following the simple HTML and CSS format as the previous example here, the main difference that we're going to do is this greater than sign to the div. So what we're doing is we go to the div portion of the HTML document here, and all the descendants in this case, because again, this is the descendant selector, all the descendants of that div, so div paragraph 1, we can check it over here, paragraph 2, again, it's following in line over here. Section is a child of div, however, it is not a direct, it is a direct descendant, but it is not a paragraph element here. And then we've got paragraph 3, but it's protected by that section, and paragraph 4. So again, looking at paragraph 4, it is a direct descendant of this. Now say we wanted to change this and we wanted to select paragraph 3, but not all the others. We could say section and then descendant of section, paragraph. If we run that, boom, we've selected the descendants of each item until we got right where we wanted to look at our code, to stylize it and do whatever. Again, you're not restricted to background colors or simple code like this. You can do pretty much any CSS selector that you want to manipulate your HTML on this. Awesome. Let's look at another example. So adjacent sibling selector. Here's where things get a little more crazy. Here's where things get a little bit more complicated, I guess, if you will. So let's look at an adjacent selector. This is the format or the syntax you would use, is the plus sign. Let's look at the example. So again, we've got our code here and we've got our CSS. In this case, we've got div. We're selecting a div. So let's find it. Here's our div. And then we've got the plus paragraph. So you would think, okay, cool, plus 2 paragraphs. Let's do that. But when we look over here to the right, wait a second, they're not highlighted. They're not receiving that code edit that we originally were hoping for. So let's read this here. This plus selector is used to select an element that is directly after another specific element. I have not really found a whole lot of use for this one just yet, just because why not just address the element directly by using descendants or um, child selectors. But in this case, what they're doing is they're taking this div element, the paragraphs, we're saying, hey, there are paragraphs here, but after this div element, we're going to select the next item here, which is paragraph 3. And as you can see, so the div element plus, all right, paragraph, and that's how we get to paragraph 3 stylizing. This may be helpful as you guys get large sections of code, a lot of HTML and a lot of CSS. This could be really helpful if you're not looking to try and drive down and trying to figure it out, look at the document, figure out what's being changed and what's, trying to root down to the original cause. Personally, I would just use the inspect element of the browser to find it. Just tell it inspect and have it give me the address of where it lives. But this is the adjacent selector. Okay. And finally, we've got a general sibling selector. So what is a general sibling selector? Well, a general sibling selector, the symbol or the syntax looks like this. If you're looking for that key on your keyboard right now, it's just under the escape key. A lot of people hit shift and it's right next to the number 1, and that will give you your general sibling selector. All right, so let's look at the example. All right, same thing. We got some code. All right, you got our CSS styling up here. All right, the general sibling selector selects all elements that are next to siblings of a specific element. Cool. All right, so again, finding our div, we're looking for an element that's div. It does have a child of paragraph, but this is paragraph 2. But as you can see over here on the right-hand side, paragraph 2 is not being selected. Again, this is all elements that are siblings of a specific element. All right, so in this case, paragraph, H2, these are all siblings. So we are looking for siblings of div. Oh, but we're looking for the paragraph siblings, right? All right, so paragraph 1, paragraph 2. But wait a second, why isn't paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 have their background changed to yellow? Well, this is because this is cascading style sheet. Remember, we work from the top down, and whatever comes the latest is what gets affected the most. Okay, things roll downhill. All right, so paragraph 3. That's the next one. We're telling it to have a background of yellow, which it does. And paragraph 4, even though it's after this little HTML tag that says code, it doesn't matter. It's still a sibling of that div element up top. And we're going to change the background color of that to yellow. Well, there you go. Looks like everything's running properly. Hopefully you guys found this video helpful. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys in the weekly discussion forum. And hopefully I can answer some questions that you guys might have. Anyway, thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.